Good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the best practices with GWIZ Education. And also, thank you for taking time out of your day to join this webinar to learn a little bit more about GWIZ. We're going to try to be as brief as possible so that we can be respectful of your time. My name is Sherry Mayberry, and if you have questions during the webinar, on the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little question box. You can type them in there, and as we're going through the training, I will try to respond. If we feel like it's something worthwhile for everybody, we'll share that question so everybody kind of gets that information. Everyone is muted, and you won't come off of mute, so just, be aware of that. Also, you got 3 handouts. Don't worry if you didn't get them downloaded. Beth's going to show you where you can find them on our website. So Beth Smith is our trainer today, and with that, we're going to get started. And I'm going to turn it over to Beth.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great day. As Sherry said, my name is Beth Smith. I'm one of the partners with GWIZ with Sherry and with Mike. And I'm happy that you've taken a few minutes out of your day to learn a little bit more about best practices and implementation of GWIZ. I looked over the registration list for this webinar, and we have a mix of people on there. Some of you are very familiar with GWIZ, some of you are somewhat familiar with GWIZ, and some of you are not familiar at all. This is a Train the Trainers webinar, so those of you who have providers utilizing the curriculum after this webinar, you should have a good understanding of all the different tools we have available on our website to help ensure that providers using the curriculum are doing so with fidelity, and that is the goal. So my overriding goals for this webinar for everyone are to, 1, get a better understanding of who GWIZ is if you're not familiar with us. 2, show you where all the components and parts and pieces are on our website to help train providers in the utilization of the curriculum. And 3, provide you with guidance and knowledge about where there are tools for you, like our utilization checklist, so you can ensure when you're observing providers utilizing GWIZ that they're doing so the way the curriculum is intended. So with that brief overview, I just want to get in and get started. I'm on the website. For those of you who are not familiar with GWIZ Education, we've been around since 2012. Our focus has always been family child care. The ironic thing is now in some states like Florida and Pennsylvania, we have centers who are utilizing our curriculum and adapting it for a center, which is kind of odd because in the past, most of it has been the other way. You know, the curriculums out there have been designed for centers, not family child care. And so this is kind of funny on our end to see this occurring. But that said, we are designed for home setting. This could be a family child care provider. This could be a family friend and neighbor provider. We've structured the curriculum so that it is easy to use and yet at the same time extremely comprehensive in its reach of the 10 developmental areas and also all ages from infants through school age. We are very cognizant of the fact that family child care providers are usually a one-man show, or I should say one woman show or one person show, and they wear multiple hats. So we are well aware of that. We are well aware that they are on tight budgets. We are also well aware that they don't have the time nor the money to go out and buy a lot of expensive equipment. So you will see as we go through here how we utilize things they would have around the house to help them engage children in learning. We are not simply a curriculum company. We do a ton of free training webinars, and I will explain that and show you where all those resources lie on the website. We want to be a solution for family child care that's well-rounded. So we feel that training is extremely important in that realm. So I'm on the website, and we have several different tabs at the top. One of the most important for those of you who are not familiar with the curriculum is probably about the curriculum, because this goes through all the different parts and pieces. This is where customers or providers would go to help them learn more about what's included in the curriculum. Our user's guide we're going to get into in just a second is very important. That's our training manual. Our state alignments is also very important. And then under educational resources, we have several things we're going to touch on this afternoon. There is a special section down here at the bottom that is just for you. So all of these tabs are related to you being a specialist or a coach working with providers. And then under training and support, we're going to go under webinar training. We're going to talk about the different trainings that we have done and how you can also utilize those with providers. So we have a lot to cover in an hour. So what we're going to do is we're going to get right into it. And where I want to start actually is with our educational resource piece, informational piece for quality specialists. So I'm under Ed Resources and I'm going to go to Learning About GWiz. We created this informational piece because we felt like our catalog was more tailored to a provider. They have different questions, I guess you could say, when they're looking at curriculum, but we wanted something for you that would kind of give you an overview of who we are, what we do, why we do, how we do, all of those important questions. So I'm going to open this booklet. It is simply a PDF, and we're going to talk about what is GWiz. First and foremost, our goal has always been to bring equity to children and providers enrolled and engaged in family child care. For too long, family child care providers have felt like second fiddle to centers. As a result, there's been a lot of dropout in family child care over the years, but recently there's been an uptick in the engaging more people into family, bringing more people into family child care, and also bringing higher quality levels to those who have been involved in family child care. So when we created our curriculum, our goal was to address those needs. And so I want you to know first and foremost that their curriculum is very intentional by design for family child care. It is not a color cut and paste box of things that comes in the mail, and we'll talk about that. Again, the training as mentioned here and the support materials. We want to be, as I said, more than just one thing. We want to be a solution. Um, and so that is who we are. If you want to learn more about Sherry and Mike and I, you can read this page. This talks about our educational experience. We worked together for oodles of gobs of years at High Reach Learning. So Sherry, Mike, and I have known each other for a very long time. In fact, Sherry came to the hospital when I was getting ready to give birth to my first child, and I was actually at the hospital when she went into labor with her last child. So we're very close. So anyway, we've been in education for a really, really long time. And when we started GWiz in 2012, it was because we felt there was a need. And so that's why we did what we did. So GWiz, as I mentioned before, is approved in many states, and these include Florida, North Carolina, Delaware, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, um, thinking out loud, that's all of them. There's some more. The Virginia is actually in the works right now. And I know in Ohio, we have been listed in one of their resource guides. So I'm going to show you on our website after we go through this part of the booklet where you can see your state alignments, because we know that's very important. We're also fully aligned with the uh, Head Start Early Learning Outcomes Framework. They keep changing the names of these things, and I'll show you where that is as well. So as I mentioned, more than curriculum. So our webinar training that we do is free. That is not just webinar training on our curriculum, but also webinar training on topics like the why behind experiences, open-ended questions, making math meaningful, and I'll show you again where all that lies on our website. And all the resources that we provide under the resources for providers and for you. That's our goal, is to continue to add to that. So that's dynamic. It changes all the time. So one of the most important things we get questions about are our lesson plans and how do we do what we do? How do we address all ages, all developmental levels, and all 10 of the developmental areas? And we actually do an entire webinar called The Why Behind Experiences that explains to providers that there is really no such thing as an art activity. That art is really science, and it's physical development, it's social development, it is creative arts, it's language development, that in one simple finger painting experience, for instance, that you can address many, many, many different developmental areas. So one of our goals in our lesson plans is to help providers connect these dots. And so we came up with a system which we think works fairly well for doing that, which is we use picture codes. So for the 10 developmental areas, each one has a picture code associated with it. Now, creative arts does have two because we have one for creative arts, one for music, just to kind of delineate within the lesson plans. But when you look at a GWIS lesson plan, you're going to see these picture codes like these right here as you go through each of the different activities. And it will help providers connect to in their mind, okay, I'm doing this activity. These are the 10 developmental areas I will be covering when I do that. So if you're doing training, if you have providers utilizing GWIS, and you're going in, say, to observe them, or if you're planning a training, this is really important that they understand when they see, for instance, the question mark, that they know the activity addresses logic and reasoning. Or when they see this smiley face, they know it addresses approaches to learning. This is a super important part of GWIS, so it's very important that they understand this. And this chart right here is in the front of every teaching guide. So if they forget, they can flip to the beginning of the teaching guide and it's right there for them. It's also, of course, in the user's guide. So those of you who have providers using GWIS probably have seen how we do, how we do this within the lesson plan. So I'm going to show an example here because I know we have people who are not as familiar. This is a small group experience that was taken from one of our units called Experimenting with Movement. And what you will see is these picture codes up here that I just showed you. So if you asked a provider who was doing GWIS what areas of development they are addressing when they do this experience, they should be able to tell you language development, logic and reasoning, approaches to learning, physical development, science, and social and emotional. Okay, they should be able to know that these picture codes that are listed here connect to the developmental areas. They might not remember what all the symbols mean, but if they don't remember, they should know where to go to look. Okay, then we put anything in red that they might need a little bit of extra time to gather. It's just to give them a heads up. Again, using things they have around the house, baking sheets, maybe they have some wooden boards or a cardboard or all three so they can compare and contrast. The first bullet point of every GWIS experience, no matter whether it's an exploring together, which is more of a group experience, or like this, which is a small group experience that they set up, and it's like what I would consider guided play because the provider's asking a lot of open-ended questions but not guiding the experience, is the why, because it's very important for providers to understand why they're doing something. And when I do training, especially during the why behind experiences, we talk about, well, if you don't know why you're doing it, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. Okay, then we level it for different developmental levels. This is not, and when I do training, I stress this. If you're doing training, stress it as well. This is not an age, this is a developmental level. So what I encourage them to do is read the whole experience and all the levels, think about every single child in their group, and then pick the adaptation that they feel would work best for them. Or if neither of these was going to work well, they're going to need to adapt it even further. Okay, so we're getting them started. We look at GWIS as the foundation of the house. In other words, we're providing that strong foundation of experiences that are intentional, that address the 10 developmental areas, but they're going to build the house based on their children. They're going to add their own creativity. They're going to individualize. They're going to make it their own. Okay, and then all GWIS experiences have open-ended questions to ask when the children are engaging in activities. And when you're doing training with providers or if you're observing them, make sure you listen for those open-ended questions because they're right there in the lesson plans. Again, this is just to get them started. It's not an end-all be-all, but it does give them an idea of the types of questions they should be asking as they observe and engage with children. Okay? I'm going to pause right there and see if anybody has any questions, particularly those who are not familiar with GWIS, any questions about the lesson plans and how we address the 10 developmental areas and the adaptations for different ages, different developmental levels.
You can just type the question, if you have one, in that little question box in the top right-hand corner. And again, this handout that Beth, or this sheet that Beth's using right now is part of the handout, but we will tell you how to get to it later afterwards. Don't have any questions, Beth. or at least yeah, if they come up, I'll let you know.
Okay, so what I'm going to do now, this booklet has other information about the teaching components, but I'm not going to go into that now. I'm going to actually show you some of these things, but I wanted to show you the highlights out of this booklet because it is very good if you're not familiar with GWiz or you want to share information with GWiz about with other specialists or coaches. This is a great place to start. So I'm just going to hit the back button. And again, I found that under educational resources, resources for quality specialists, and then learning about GWiz. Okay. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go back to our home page, just so we're back at square one here, and I'm going to go under about the curriculum. So another really important document that we provide is our user's guide. Now this guide is very extensive. It's almost 90 pages in length. And what we've done here on this page of our website is we've sectioned it out so you can pick the section that you want to highlight. To be honest, each one of these sections could be a separate training if you wanted it to be. So if you're working with providers, you're looking for ideas for training and materials for training. Let's say you want to do a training on individualization, you could just go to this section of our user's guide and you're welcome to use the materials in there with your providers. So there's, again, many different sections in here. A couple I'm going to highlight are the individualization and authentic assessment. We talked about developmental areas, but I'm going to show you what all was in there. And then meeting the needs of all children with GWiz. The philosophy, research, and more is important for those of you who are not familiar with who we are. It provides the basis of how we do things and why we do things. So that, again, is a very extensive section that I would encourage you to check out. But right now we're going to go into individualization and authentic assessment. So we get asked all the time, is there a formal assessment tool that links with GWiz? I'm going to cover that answer right now. There is not a formal assessment tool that we developed that correlates with GWiz, but the beauty of that is that because we are being so comprehensive in our coverage of the 10 developmental areas and all developmental levels, GWiz is structured such that providers can choose to use the formal assessment tool that they feel would work best for them. We have a lot of providers that use either ASQ, Ages and Stages questionnaire, or they use Teaching Strategies Gold as their formal child assessment, and they use GWiz as their curriculum. I know of one particular five-star provider in Ohio that does that, and she's found that it works beautifully. But this section talks about anecdotal notes and the importance of anecdotal notes and what an anecdotal note is and what a reflection on that anecdotal note is and how you put all this together. So again, if you wanted to do a training on this, you could use these materials from our website as the basis of that training. So we view it as a 5-step approach in the GWiz curriculum where providers are asked to observe, reflect on what they observe, to plan based on those observations, to do the experiences with the individual children, and then reflect on how things went. This explains that 5-step approach in this section. Each step is basically outlined. And then we get into, well, what exactly is an anecdotal note? And when I do training and I'm going through the user's guide and I talk about it, to me, it's like being like taking photos with your cell phone or videos with your cell phone. I mean, it's only going to record what it actually sees and hears. It's not going to observe, it's not going to record what it thinks it sees and hears. That's different. And so when I talk to providers, that's the analogy I give them. It's just exactly what you see, exactly what you hear, not what you think you hear. That's going to come later. So this explains what an anecdotal note is, and then this explains what a reflection is, which is when they do sit back and they think about, okay, this is what I observed. Well, what do I learn from that? And it gives examples. If you scroll down here to the bottom of this page, there's an example. So on the next page, we talk about the tools we've provided both in the curriculum and in this user's guide to help providers do that. One of them is the Observe and Reflect grid, which is actually in this document as it's not filled in, it's blank. They can print it out and use it as many times as they want. And then the other part is the Individualization Web that is provided in the curriculum. It looks like this. And then we even have a new component that we added about a year ago called our Customized Individualized Lesson Planning Sheet, which is a tool to help providers write down how they're going to individualize the day's activities for the children in their group. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a second. This is very small and I know hard to see. But here is an example, or the printable observe and reflect grid. So this is one that you're welcome to use, or providers are welcome to use. Then we've given that filled out so they can get an example of what it looks like to do an anecdotal note and reflect upon it and plan experiences based on those reflections. And then here's a blank individualization web. We provide one for each unit that has this part filled out, but this is a blank one. So let's pretend that a provider is doing their own unit. They can use this blank individualization web as a tool. Oh, sorry. And then we've filled out one so that it looks like what it might look like. Now, this tool can be used in multiple ways. It can be used to help connect a child's interest to a unit. It can also be used to help address a specific need or area of development. Um, it can be used in a lot of different ways. So that's what the individualization web is. Any questions on any of the tools or resources provided in this section of the user's guide about individualization and authentic assessment?
Doesn't look like we have any. So
Okay.
we'll keep going.
All right, so the next section I'm going to go into is developmental areas. Let's say that you want to help providers better understand what language development is or what math knowledge is. This is a section you can use to do that. In the GWIZ curriculum, we address 10 of these developmental areas. We looked at all the state standards practically when we created the curriculum, as well as Head Start, and we came up with these 10 as the 10 we focus on, which seems to cross-reference well with most states. But what this section has is for each area of development, say language development, it has in the blue box an explanation of what that area of development is with what we use as our program symbol. And then in the pink box, it has what it might look like. So examples based on different ages, developmental levels, what it might look like. And it goes through all 10 of the areas. So here's literacy knowledge, and you can scroll down and you can check out approaches to learning. It goes through the whole, all 10 areas like that. And then at the end of that, for us, we have what we call our indicators. These are our skills. These are the skills that then connect to the developmental areas. So for instance, for language development, here's the symbol. These are the 4 skills that fall under language development. So when you look at your alignment chart on our state standards page, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see these codes aligned to your codes. We actually built a curriculum component into it called Connecting the Dots. Every unit has a 16-page document that shows specifically what activities address, say, LD1 in that unit or LK1. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. But we felt that was really important because it also then helps providers connect to their formal assessment. Okay, so again, developmental areas is in that section. And then finally, meeting the needs of all children is the other area I want to highlight. This is a really important area. It talks in this section about cultural responsiveness, linguistic responsiveness, suspected disabilities, delays, and special needs. There's a lot of information here with links to webinars and tips. There is even a questionnaire or questions that providers might want to ask families that are considering enrolling or have enrolled. We have a tool called All About My Weekend because we found that providers on Monday, if they have a better idea of how the weekend went, they're going to have a better idea of how Monday goes. This is a printable that anybody is welcome to use. It's available in Spanish as well. And then we go on to linguistic responsiveness. We do build tips in for ELL, DLL children into the curriculum, but this is some more tips that they can use for linguistic. And then it goes on into disabilities and delays, suspected delays. So again, this is a whole entire section that you could build training off this one section. Or it would be something that would be really important if you are working with a provider and you're training and you're observing and you notice that there are potential areas where they can improve in, say, linguistic responsiveness or cultural responsiveness. This would be a section you could refer them to in the user's guide. And finally, the last section I do want to highlight is called Gee Whiz in Your Day. This talks a lot about the importance of play and the fact that GWiz is a foundation, like I just said about building that house. We are the foundation, but the provider is going to build the house. GWiz is not intended to take the entire day. It is meant to take part of the day, and the provider is meant to build upon that. So in this section, it talks about what free play is, and then it also talks about what guided play is. And in GWiz, we do a lot of guided play. And you'll see that when you read through the lesson plans. And this talks for the provider about what guided play is and why it's important, and how they can incorporate it into their programs and build upon what we've already given them. This continues on with the importance of establishing a daily schedule. We have a sample daily schedule in here, and then we also have one that is blank that they can print out and write their own schedule. Okay. So any questions at all? I'm not going to go into all the other sections in the user's guide, but any questions I can answer about the user's guide before we move on?
Don't see any questions, but I know Beth pointed out this user's guide that she's using is not a handout, but you can go to our website and print it down. It's free.
Yep, it's under About the Curriculum, and then you just go to User's Guide. And you can, if you click on this, it's the entire book. If you click over here, you go to whatever section you want to go to. So that choice is yours. And like Sherry said, you can save it to your computer. You can download it and print it. That is up to you. When I do training, we try to be very cognizant of printing. So I encourage providers to download this to their computer and put it on their desktop where they have access to it quickly and easily, as opposed to printing it out. But of course, if they wanted to print it, they certainly could. Okay.
It will also download to a tablet. Works great on a tablet. But we
Yeah,
don't have
and
any
we
questions. So
all right, so now I'm going to go back under educational first I'm going to go back to curriculum, sorry, and I want to go to the state alignment page because I know that's really important. So what you're going to see here is you're going to see our state map, and you're going to see all the different states. And if you click on any of the states, say, let's see, we'll click on Ohio, you're going to see several things. One, you're going to see our alignment to your standards. And then you're going to see this is a hot link to the actual standards on the Ohio government website. This one has some extra handouts because we have some extra things for Ohio. And in some states, we even have a flyer that's created that you can download and share with providers. But the most important thing is the first one, which is our alignment chart. So I'm going to click on the alignment chart, and I'm going to just briefly look at what we have here. So over here we have the standards for Ohio, and then there are those learning indicators that I showed you in the user's guide. And this goes on. It depends on the state. Some are a couple pages, and some are many more. It really just depends on their standards. In some states, they will have different standards for birth to 3, and then a separate set for pre-K. If that's the case, you'll see that there's going to be more than one alignment because you have more than one set of standards. So if you want to view the standards, this is where you go, again, under About the Curriculum, and then to state alignments. And like I said, we are approved for in several states for their programs, like in Pennsylvania, it's I think in Keystone Stars, and in Delaware, it's Delaware Stars. And so anyway, it just depends on the state. And we're adding to that list, like I said, Virginia is in the process right now. So that just continues to grow. So now I'm going to go back to educational resources and go to resources for quality specialists, to something brand new as of today. It is our toolkit. We knew we had a lot of great resources on our website, but we also knew that it required you to dig around a little bit to find some things. So what we did is we created a toolkit. So if you click here, it's going to open our new toolkit. You might even have gotten an email from us earlier today about this. But what the toolkit focuses on is 3 areas, which is increasing quality, engaging families, and embracing diversity, and training. And so what I've done here is in the increasing quality section, we have state alignment documentation. So if you click this link, it's going to take you right to that page we were just on. Okay. If you want information on the 10 developmental areas addressed in the curriculum, you click this, it'll go to the section in the user's guide about the developmental areas. If you want to learn about enhancing the environment and the provider's role in enhancing the environment, we have an informational booklet on that that you are welcome to utilize for training or for building your own training, and you link right here. The individualization and assessment link is going to take you to that section we just looked at within the user's guide. And then it talks on the next page about some of the components that we have in the curriculum that help with individualization and assessment. And I'm not going to go through these right now because I'm going to show you where we have more detailed information on the components, but just list them here, and I'm going to show you where the samples of them are in the back. Embracing families, we have an entire document dedicated to parent involvement and family engagement. Click here and it'll take you there. We have numerous blog posts that would be appropriate for families, like picking the right toys to promote creativity or better thinking more questions that you're welcome to share. We have a webinar on diversity. And then when we looked in the user's guide and we talked about the cultural and linguistic responsiveness, this would take you right to that section. And then this details some of the components included in the curriculum that help with family involvement. And again, I'm going to show you those samples in the back. Our training resources, this puts it all in one place. This is going to be a very dynamic document because we are always adding training, but these are all of the current webinar titles that we have done that are available, that are posted on our YouTube channel, and I'm going to show you where they are on our website as well, that you are welcome to utilize with providers. These are for providers, so they all include a post-assessment that they must complete in order to download a certificate of attendance. So I'll show you where all that lives on our website, and I'll show you how you can access that. If, for instance, you look at this and you're like, wow, lesson planning for a mixed age group, and you watch the webinar and you're like, this is great, I would love to do this training with my providers. If you email me at bsmith@gwizeducation.com, I will send you the actual PowerPoint presentation so you can utilize it. And there's no charge for that. And then this talks about our user's guide. It talks about all the different sections that I just went through and showed you that you might want to use as a basis for training, or you just want to make sure your providers are aware of. Okay, so that's all there. I'm going to skip that next page for right now. Here's a sample of an individualization web. This is actually from our September unit. And then here's a sample. We talked about the customized individualized lesson planning sheet where they can write down the individualizations they're planning to do. We actually offer this file with each unit as a Word document that they can type in the boxes, or as a PDF if they prefer to write. But basically what we do is we fill in this part right here. So this is day 1 of our unit called Fantastic Friendship. And then our children's names are Trena, Jamie, and Raul. Now, if this was the actual document, it would have 6 columns across, but I wanted to make it big enough that everybody could see the sample, so I only used 3. And what I did was I just abbreviated the title of the activity, and then I wrote down how you could individualize it for Trena. So Trena is going to have an individualization for who are my friends, that is this. And when we do the Find Your Name game, Jamie is going to have this adaptation. And when we do Fun with Friends, Raul's going to do this way. So in other words, this is a document that providers, if they are required to document how they are individualizing the curriculum, they can use this component to do so. And it is included with every unit that we do. Okay, it's part of the curriculum. That is included. This is a sample of the connecting the dots. So remember I mentioned that we take it a step further and not only use the picture codes, but then we break it down farther. Here's an example of that. This document is actually 16 pages long. What we do is for each one of the skills, like LD1, understand spoken language, we literally list out all the activities in the unit that address that skill. And there are 40 skills, so we need 16 pages to cover all 40 of them. Then what they can do is they can look at the skills on their formal assessment. Let's say they're doing ASQ or they're doing, teaching strategies goal. There's definitely going to be a skill that talks about spoken language. They can write the code for that here. So as they're correlating, as they're doing their anecdotal notes, as they're evaluating children, they can say, oh, well, I really need to evaluate Trina, who was just on the page before, in the area of spoken language. So when we do respectful bubble fun, I'll be sure to make sure I pay attention to see how she understands spoken language. So again, all 40 of the indicators are in this one document, and it's every unit has it. So there is no excuse for a provider not to understand what specific skills they are addressing because it's right there in that document for them. This is a sample of our family letter, which is available in both English and Spanish. The beauty of GWiz is everything we do is digital. It's PDF, so they do not even need to print this out. They can send it as an email to parents, which eliminates that it's going to get lost under the car seat or under the floor mat in the back of the car. We also include something in our units called All About My Week reports. There's actually 2 of these per sheet of paper. I again made it larger so that everyone could see it, but it's a way for the provider to communicate with parents and guardians at the end of the week about their child. You know, what did they enjoy the most, what they're learning how to do, and what they're getting good at. We encourage them to make copies of these before they send them home to put in their child's portfolio. And if they do that, and they do it every week, they're going to have a running developmental picture of this child over time. So that is also included with every unit, and it's available in English and Spanish. Our digital family notes are JPEG files, so think of them like a photo on your cell phone. And when the provider downloads them, then they can text them or they can email them to parents and guardians. They're just very simple things that they can do at home to reinforce the unit. And again, encourage family involvement, parental involvement. And then a new component that we just added for the starting September 2021 is called Let's Read Together. And this is a very short, very simplistic book that the provider will print out, cut apart, and put together, and then send home for them to read with their children, for parents and guardians to read with their children. On the last page, we even included some open-ended questions because it's just as important for them to ask open-ended questions as it is the provider. So that's called Let's Read Together. If you have providers that are using GWiz, this will be a new component they'll see with September of 2021. Any questions or comments regarding the toolkit? Again, this is going to be a dynamic piece that is going to be added to as we go along because we're always adding new resources and we're, trying to make things even more comprehensive. So any initial thoughts, comments, suggestions for things we could add to it as it is now?
Yeah,
Anything at all?
one question. Show one more time where to find that and where they can download that from the homepage.
Okay. All right. I'm going to back out. Okay. Under educational resources, resources for quality specialists, FCC Toolkit. And then you just click on that. And when you click on that, it's going to take you to this page and then you click there to download.
Great, thanks. Let's see. That's it. Oh, 2 questions about that, about the toolkit, where to
Okay.
find it. Make sure. So we got it. All right, thanks.
Okay. All right. Educational resources, resources for quality specialists, and Toolkit. Okay. We have numerous tools under here for supporting providers. There's a 3-day sample lesson plan that you are welcome to share with the providers. You just click the picture and it was from our July unit, but it's really something you could do at any time. And this is laid out just like our teaching guides are laid out. So it starts with an introduction. It has a table of contents. If this was an actual complete teaching guide, it would have about 35-ish pages. It really depends on the unit. Each teaching guide is 10 days. This is an overview of what the unit's going to be like and the activities we have planned. Some providers will actually print this one page out and post it so families can see what's going to be happening over the next 10 days. Our school age activities are here. And then we actually go into the lesson plan. So our lesson plans they're not dated. Okay, they just say day, and then there's a focus, and this is a cumulative list of all the developmental areas addressed during this day. So if they do all the experiences that we have, they'll do social and emotional, language, physical development and health, approaches to learning, logic and reasoning, creative arts, social studies, music, science, and literacy. We have a health and safety tip every day. We have a teaching tip every day, and we have a transition idea every day. In this box over here in blue, we have vocabulary, and this is vocabulary that we want the provider to utilize when they're having conversations with children. Habitat might seem like a very big word, but when you use it in context, children begin to understand what it means. And then this is just some other ways they can continue to do that on the second page of today's activities. We do not have we do not have a circle time. What we have as our group is called Exploring Together because it's very interactive, very hands-on, and is exactly what it says it is, exploring together. So again, if they do all the experience, if they do this activity, they will cover language, social and emotional, music, social studies, creative arts, science, physical development and health, logic and reasoning, and approaches to learning. This is also one that gets them moving, and it can be done outside. You will see sometimes we have links to very, very short videos, and these are educational videos. And the reason we're using them, and I'm talking short as in a 2-minute video, is because, for instance, you may live in an area where children have never been to a forest. And in today's world, technology can be a very powerful thing if you use it the right way. And if you use it to find information or to share information about things that children may not otherwise had an opportunity to see. For instance, a lot of children will know what an elephant is, right? But they may never have seen an elephant in the wild in Africa, and I don't think we're going to be traveling there anytime soon to go see one. So we can use National Geographic or Discovery Kids or something like that to show them what it's like when you see African elephants in the wild. These are very rare. We put them in, but they're not certainly in every unit and certainly not in every activity. They're where we feel like they would be a powerful tool to help children realize the importance of using technology to gain information. Open-ended questions are again a part of every experience that we do. And then on the second part of today's activities, the pink boxes are small group experiences. And then down at the bottom, I'll show you in a second, is a purple box, which is for infants. And again, you're going to see where we have, in some cases, adaptations for different developmental levels. And then in some other ones where, for instance, in this one, they're just exploring books, you don't need to do that because the children will automatically do it on their own. And then this is an infant experience. Again, it can also be done with toddlers, but it's something that's designed to be done one-on-one. And the picture codes are right there. So when we talked about the connecting the dots piece, what you would see is you would see that this title of this activity, Fun with Colors of the Forest, is going to show up with skills in language development. It's going to show up with skills and approaches to learning. It's going to show up with skills in logic and reasoning, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so that one activity, again, is going to cover all these different developmental areas and many, many different skills. That is the goal. That is the goal that providers will begin to understand that when they're doing an activity, it really is developing many different areas of development. And then this is just a sample. So it has 3 days of experiences, and we've even included a school age experience, actually 2 of them, if you scroll down. And then here is the chart. This is in the back of every teaching guide. This is only the 3-day sample, so obviously these 3 up here apply. But here's where they can see at a glance. This is another place they can see that, which, for instance, let's say they're doing fun with colors of the forest. These are the specific skills that they will address. And if they don't remember what LD2 is, or they don't remember what LR1 is, they can go to their user's guide and look for learning indicators, and it will spell it out for them. Or they can go to connecting the dots because it's right there too. Okay, so our goal was to not just provide them with something to do, was to help them learn as they use GWiz that what they are doing is very powerful in helping children develop in many different areas, and also that they can do, say, one experience and they can adapt it for different developmental levels, or they can adapt their expectations for different developmental levels. Any questions on how we structure our teacher's guide? Again, this is just a sample of an actual unit, but it gives them a really good idea of how we do things. We also do offer providers a 14-day free trial, so they can sign up and they can download the units and they can try it for 14 days. If they're not happy, then they just cancel before 14 days is up, because we want them to be happy, and we know that one curriculum does not fit everybody. So any questions, comments, suggestions regarding the lesson plans, I got to this under educational resources, resources for quality specialists, and supporting providers. That's where I found that sample.
That's an important little tab for you guys as trainers, but there are no questions. So.
Okay. There are other resources here that you are welcome to share with providers. And this talks about our cohort, which is the training part, but I'm going to go somewhere else to show you that. But before I leave this important tab under resources for quality specialists, I want to go here to utilization checklist. I know that we have lots of providers who are using GWiz out there, and I know that you're supporting them. I also know that it's very important for them to be using it the way it's designed. So this checklist is super easy. It is a way for you, when you go in to observe, to see if in fact providers are utilizing the curriculum as designed. So on the first page, it's things that you will want to observe. You know, do you see this? Do you see that, right? On the second page, it's do you hear? We talked about the open-ended questions. Do you hear open-ended questions? Do you hear children engaging in conversations with providers? And then questions to ask. These are things that they should be able to answer if they're utilizing the curriculum to the fullest. And if they don't have an answer to these questions, then the last page is a checklist where you can give them suggestions of where they might want to go. You might want to say, I want you to read the user's guide, or I want you to watch the lesson plan on making math, or the excuse me, webinar on making math meaningful, or I feel like you could benefit from reading this booklet. Again, all of this is right here for you, because we know when you go in, it's important for you to know if they're utilizing it the way it's supposed to be utilized. So again, to get to the utilization checklist, under educational resources, resources for quality specialists, and then you just scroll down to utilization checklist. Any questions about that component?
No.
Okay, I'm going to go back to the home page, and I want to go to training with the little bit of time that we have left. If you go under webinar training, like I've said earlier, this is a really big part of what GWiz is. Yes, curriculum is how it all started, but training is really super important. We just did a webinar last week called Choosing and Using GWiz. This is a wonderful overview video for, one, providers using the curriculum who needed training, or two, providers who are thinking about utilizing the curriculum and wanted to know what it's all about. So they can simply come to this web page, they can watch it, they can do the post assessment, and once they complete the post assessment and submit it, then they get access to a certificate of attendance. The other ones we have on here right now are lesson planning for a mixed age group, what, why, how, open-ended questions, the why behind experiences. This is another version of learning about GWiz, making math meaningful, all about GWiz, introduction GWiz. Those are all a little bit different. Basically a good overview, or for somebody who's learning to use it. This is a wonderful webinar for connecting the dots. When we created this component last year, we felt that we needed a webinar dedicated to how to use it and how to connect it to the formal assessment. So this is an excellent one for not only you, but also for providers utilizing the curriculums to make sure they're getting the most out of that component, and then exploring diversity. Again, this page is very dynamic. It is constantly changing. We are constantly doing new webinars. So as we do them, we post them on this section. We also post them on our YouTube channel, which I believe is GWiz Education for FCC. But the links that are in the toolkit will take you right to our YouTube recordings. And then, go ahead. Yeah, Sherry.
Well, I was going to point out that each one of those had a link for post-assessment and certificate. So if you suggest for provider to watch the webinar, and they do that. Then they, after they finished, if they click that link for post-assessment, it's like 10 quick questions, they'll get a link to a certificate that says they have observed the webinar, and and that they understand it. No one really sees their score, but they don't get that link for an attendance until they complete the post-assessment. And that's just kind of a way for you also to know if they really did watch the webinar or not. So I'm just going to point that out.
Exactly. Now for this webinar today, one of the handouts that you'll see over there is actually a certificate for you. If you want to have proof that you've been trained in GWiz and how to utilize the curriculum, or how providers should utilize the curriculum, it is one of the handouts. We will eventually be posting that certificate and the recording of this webinar under Resources for Quality Specialists, Webinars for Quality Specialists. It usually takes 24 hours or so to get the recording up and get all the things posted. So let's say you attended today, but you know other specialists or coaches you think would benefit from this training, just check back in, a day or so under, again, Resources for Quality Specialists, Webinars for Quality Specialists, and it should be up there and ready for you to watch. And we'll post a certificate there. See, we don't normally give a certificate when we do provider training. Like Sherry said, they have to do the post-assessment to get the certificate. But with you all, we felt that, it was more you're a little different than the providers, and we felt like it would be okay to give you the certificate without making you do a post-assessment. We know how busy you are. And then finally, under About the Curriculum, and this is one of the things that we went over and gave as a handout during the Choosing and Using GWiz last week, is this is actually a PowerPoint slide deck. And what it does is it goes through each of the components included in the curriculum, like the teaching guide, and it gives the features and benefits, and it has an example of what it looks like. So for instance, there's a component in the curriculum called Add and Enhance. This is a one-page piece of paper, but it's divided up by activity areas, and it gives them ideas of materials they can add to different areas to enhance the unit. So for instance, here's one on creepy crawlers. So it suggests different things to put in the different areas. Letters and literacy, this was a component we added to help incorporate letter sounds, letter recognition, and literacy skills for those children who are developmentally ready. We didn't want to write that into the lesson plans because that is not the majority of the children this curriculum is written for, but we know that there are children out there who are ready for that. So what we did was we took and added a new component called literacy, and look, it's a separate component from the teaching guide. But what we did is we found activities within the teaching guide for that unit, and we added a way that you can incorporate letters, letter sounds, literacy. There's usually about 6 different experiences that are extended through this booklet for those children who are ready to explore letters, letter sounds. We do not teach letters in isolation, nor numbers, colors, and shapes. They are all integrated into other things that we are doing. The teaching tool comes in the second unit. It's a hands-on manipulative type material. Here's an example of one that was pattern strips and cards for a unit we did on health and safety. That comes in the second unit. In the first unit, we have story props. This talks about the connecting the dots, which we spent some time on, and gives again the example of how it works and suggests that they watch the webinar. The customized individualized lesson planning sheet, we talked about that. That's where we adapted it for Trina, Jamie, and Raul. The story props, like I said, normally it is an original story, and the text for the story is in the teaching guide, and then the props they use to tell the story. This one was called Hopping Frogs, and they made a blanket. They used a blanket for a pond, and the story was about the frogs hopping in and out of the pond. And the Printable Puppet comes in the second unit. This is a community helper of some kind or sort. This was a gardener. We have a materials list with every unit so that providers can quickly and easily see every day what they need. Anything in red just means it might need a little extra time to gather or prepare. The family involvement components, we saw some of them in the toolkit that include the Let's Read Together, the family letter, the All About My Week reports, and the digital notes, and this just shows them what those components look like. We also have per child components, which we call make it sheets. These are not color, cut, and paste at all. An example of a make it might be we give them the pattern strips and cards to take home and to continue playing with mom and dad. We do not do anything that's like color this duck and cut it out and that's that. No, we don't do that. The individualization web we talked about, we saw a sample of that within the user's guide that comes with each unit to help them individualize the curriculum based on child's interests and needs. So this slide deck is great if a provider wants to learn more about the components themselves. And again, it's easy to find. It's under about the curriculum and it just simply says components. If they want to see our outline and see the units that we're doing for the year, we do 24 over the course of the year, they're here. If they want to see a sample lesson plan, just one day with call outs, it's here. Again, the state alignments are there. And then under the educational resources, you'll see a lot of resources under here for providers. We have developmental checklists, we have health and safety resources, we have developmental disabilities information. When holidays are coming up, we'll post it here because we do not write holidays into the curriculum because we know not everybody celebrates all the holidays. We have resources for families under this tab that they can share with families. So we've really tried hard to be more than just curriculum for providers. We really are trying our best to support them in as many different ways as we can. So with that, we have 4 minutes left. I would like to take any questions that anyone has about anything that I covered or anything that I haven't covered that you have a question about before we wrap it up at 2:30.
I don't see any questions, but just a note, if you're with an agency that provides curriculum for your providers, in other words, the agency pays for it, and it's more than one, you can contact me and I can help you work through that to get that set up as easily as possible. We have a lot of agencies that will provide the curriculum for the providers. Don't have any questions. You'll probably think about it the minute we leave the webinar. And if you do, you've got our email, or when you registered, you got the email. And again, Beth showed you where all the handouts are that were, there on in the little top right-hand corner of your page. But if we don't have any questions, we want to thank you again for coming, and just let us know of any comments or suggestions.
Yeah, and there's just a 3-question survey that'll pop up after we wrap up here. If you can answer that survey, that will really help us. Also, if you have any thoughts or ideas on future webinars we should do, topics we should cover, we would love to hear those as well. My email was in the toolkit, and Sherry's email is simply S as in Sam Mayberry at gwizeducation.com. So like she said, if you're an agency and you're interested in bulk purchases, you contact her. But she can also be a great resource to you if you need help doing something on the website.
Well, we'll try anyway. But
And I
go
forgot to
ahead.
mention, if you have providers who are using the curriculum, we are more than happy to set up a trainer account for you where it's complimentary. That would give you access so you could click on this login button. You could log in, you could see the actual units and lesson plans your providers should be using at that time. So if that's something that would be helpful for you, just reach out to Sherry because she can set that up for you.
Yeah, I'd be glad to do that. Okay. Well, with that, we're going to break it right at 2:30. Again, we thank you so much for coming and have a great day.
Thanks so much. Bye.